Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. The Indiana House has passed a bill that will change Indiana's congressional maps. It comes after pressure from President Trump and Republican leadership to help give the GOP an advantage during the midterms. The new map hopes to give Republicans all 9 Indiana U.S. House seats. The bill still must pass the Senate, where it's not clear if it has enough support. The Senate will return Monday to debate the bill from the House. Members of both parties got a chance to speak during the final House debate Friday.
Section 1 allows and clarifies redistricting at a time other than the first regular session following the U.S. decennial census. Section 2 was some dates that were put in code for COVID, so we're just removing those out. Section 3 defines the pathway that this bill will take should it get challenged, and the pathway leads it to the Indiana Supreme Court.
What this proposed map and this idea that's been talked about since August is you really do want to erase the Democratic Party when it comes to Congress. An institution that I once worked for a Democrat. And that really, I kind of thought, how do we get here? How do we get to the point where it becomes even defensible to say that 7 out of 9 is not enough? We have to have 9 out of 9.
All right, for more on this, let's bring in 2 members of Indiana's best political team now, Democrat Lara Beck and Republican Mario Massillamany. We'll start with your initial reaction to this. Good to see you both. Mario, we'll start with you.
So, here's the thing, Phil. If you look on the East Coast, a lot of these states, the Democrats are outraged that, they might be losing some seats here in Indiana, but in Maine, Massachusetts, various other states where there's 45% Republican voter turnout, we have no representation in the House because it's been gerrymandered so badly. Additionally, if you look at the 2008 Obama numbers, Democrats should actually want this map, because if you look at those numbers, they would actually have a 5-4 majority in the House with those types of numbers. So this is not to say that we're going to have a 9-0 map. What this does is actually it weakens certain other seats, and it makes them more in play. So it actually gives more opportunities for Democrats to have a chance of winning more seats.
Okay, so Mario, I know you can't see Lara, but Lara, you were smiling while Mario was talking. So let's go to you now. What is your take on this?
Well, I have to laugh because, I mean, the mental gymnastics and the way people will have to twist themselves to make this make sense when all this is done is this is being done for an audience of one, and that's Donald Trump. These maps, just a few years ago, the Republicans all talked about how great these maps were, how fair they were. The only reason they're doing this is because Donald Trump is worried that he will lose Congress. That's the only reason they're doing it. And when you look at the Indiana map specifically, where I find it almost humorous with Mario, I love you, Mario, but I can't with you on this one. I mean, when you look at this map, someone who clearly has never been to Indiana and probably only seen it from maybe looked out their window when they flew over it. I mean, it was drawn in D.C. by somebody who just has no relationship here. So it is split by 38th Street in Marion County. And if you live at 39th and Emerson, you are going to be in the same congressional district as someone in Madison, Indiana. If you live at 34th and Sherman in Indianapolis, you're going to be in the same congressional district as somebody in Corridon. So they split the communities of interest, which is why they're saying it's for political reasons. But I think from a broader perspective is no one really wants this. I mean, there was a Turning Point rally at the Statehouse on Friday.
Yeah.
I've seen more people at a 3rd grade Catholic youth organization basketball game.
I was going to ask you about that because we've talked about this several times here in the show, Lara, that it doesn't seem like there's too much interest in this from the public's perspective.
Well, and I think if you look at it, if you take a step back as well, and you look at it from a global perspective, the polling isn't matching up. You've got the Senate, who has been basically asserting that they don't have the votes. There were only 2 people who spoke out in favor of it in the House, and then you have, like, I don't know, 15 people show up to a Turning Point rally that, as a staffer, I would have been embarrassed to have sent my governor out to.
Mario, I'll bring you back. I'll bring you in here to talk about the public interest. Go ahead.
The only other thing I would say, though, before
they need to stop doing these rallies. They did a rally last week. They did a rally this Friday. The numbers are atrocious. And so if you're trying to convince people that redistricting is the way to go, that's not the way to do it. Stop having these rallies. To Lara's point, yes, I played CYO basketball. There were more people at a CYO basketball game than there are at this Turning Point rally or at the rally a week ago. So that's not helping make the argument.
I played CYO basketball as well, Mario. And to your point, there aren't a lot of people at CYO basketball games. So that being said,
the parents who love them, we are all there. Phil, there was one other thing I wanted to say.
But okay. Lara, I just want to get to you real quick on this. Does this go through? What happens once it gets to the Senate?
Nobody knows. But I want to make it very clear that the Republicans who are voting against this are doing so at great personal risk to themselves. And frankly, to me, it's unacceptable that there is a culture of intimidation out there, that people are being swatted, that folks can't consult with their constituents and vote on behalf of their constituents without being threatened. And I find that incredibly, incredibly disturbing and wrong. And we need to stop that here in Indiana.
No doubt. 30 seconds, Mario, on this. On Monday, what are we going to see?
I think it's still too close to call. I've talked to state senators and also House members, and they believe that it's still up in the air. They don't have the votes right now. They're hoping to at least get close to it and then put public pressure when they have to vote in person. But right now, I don't believe that they have the votes, but they're hoping to get there in the next couple days.
All right, stick around, guys. We'll talk more here coming up in the show a little bit later on. Coming up, I speak to U.S. Representative Jim Baird. His district will change if the Senate adopts the new congressional maps. His thoughts coming up after the break. All right, welcome back. I had the chance to speak with House Representative Jim Baird last week. If new maps are approved by the Senate this week, his district could change. I asked him about that and if he's worried about Democratic turnout in retaliation. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Have you had a chance to see the new map?
Oh, absolutely.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it looks like a fair representation of the state of Indiana, and I really appreciate, based on some of the information that I've come across, the fact that some of the undercounted counties in the past, like 5 out of the 6 were Republican districts that were undercounted, and then those that were overcounted, there was 6 out of 8 that was Democrat. And so I think that through our oversight committee deserves to have a reevaluation to make sure that we're coming up with the right number of representation and the right experience for the people of the state of Indiana.
Any concern, Congressman, about your district specifically?
Well, it's, by serving in the Indiana House representative for 6 or 8 years, I pretty well know a lot of the folks in the new areas that has a possibility of being in. These are just, these maps aren't finalized yet.
Right.
But the areas that the map shows that we might gain are certainly areas that we've represented before in the Indiana House.
As you mentioned, not finalized. This is neither a yes or a no yet. But if things do go the way the governor and a lot of your fellow lawmakers want it to go, this might be the reality, right? So,
sure.
Are you concerned about Democratic turnout then next year?
I'm always concerned about turnout. I'm always concerned about Republican turnout. I think we have a responsibility. We have the right to vote, and I think it's very important that we as voters make sure that we live up to that responsibility and carry out the duties that are important to our country. After all, it's our country, and what we do with it has a direct impact from what the vote comes out.
Well, Representative, we'll keep an eye on that, and thank you for talking with us about that. I want to turn your attention to that National Guard shooting that happened over the holiday, and get your take on that before we move on here.
That's absolutely devastating, and my military background also makes my heart go out to those families and those soldiers that were killed. And I hope they find the perpetrators, and they already have, but I hope we bring them to swift justice, because there's no excuse for that kind of thing to go on in this country. And we ought to all be concerned. It ought to be a wake-up call that there are people among us now, with all the individuals that have gotten into this country in the last 3 or 4 years. It ought to be a wake-up call to make sure that we take responsibility and do our vetting more appropriately. And the president has even called on us to look back at how the vetting was done when some of these individuals came in under the guest entry program.
Right. Yeah. Well, to that point, I wanted to ask you about that a little bit, because a lot of talk has been centered around the Afghan refugee situation in our country since that shooting. As far as that review that you just talked about and what the president is asking for you to do, what's the status on that?
Well, he's just wanting to review how those individuals were vetted, and if they were vetted, and we're finding out that maybe they weren't vetted very thoroughly. And that's a major concern. So even though the individuals may have worked with our soldiers in Afghanistan, that doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't vet those individuals. But also, along with that, this individual got in under other pretenses and qualified for that program. We want to make sure that we're taking care of that kind of review.
Is there a risk of maybe putting some refugees at risk of reprisal with the Taliban, obviously putting them in harm's way if they aren't allowed to stay?
Well, yes. And, the way we ended up getting out of Afghanistan was a tragedy in itself. We lost a Marine right from the state of Indiana. And so the fact that those individuals had to make that kind of sacrifice is just unnecessary, in my opinion, if we'd had a strategic plan for getting out. So then that carries on over into how we're vetting these individuals. Even though they may have supposedly worked with us, that still doesn't mean that you shouldn't vet them appropriately.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Representative Baird, I appreciate you coming on. I have one more question for you, a couple more questions here before we let you go. In regards to the budget, what's the status on the latest budget negotiations?
Well, that's an ongoing process. I think we've got, 9 appropriation bills to pass yet. We've got 3 of them already done. We funded agriculture and the VA. We also funded the legislative branch so that we through a full year. And then we funded the rest of it through January of 26. So that allows us to get back to work. We're back in D.C. today, and we intend to finish up this job after we've been held up for 40-some days.
Yeah, set you back, huh?
Yes.
Any talk about possibly passing a bill that would get employees paid during a future possible shutdown?
Well, we better get through this one and make sure they get paid on the times right now. In agriculture, the shutdown caused some of the programs that are important to agriculture. It caused a disruption of the services to SNAP, and so all of that we need to make sure we can stop putting those people under those kind of circumstances.
Yeah.
So yes, from the standpoint of your question, we're definitely looking at what we can do and cannot do.
Would you support a bill of such?
I always evaluate my bills right up to the time I vote, and I want to make sure that we don't have a lot of unintended consequences, and I want to make sure that people of Indiana are served appropriately, as well as the rest of the country.
Fair enough. Representative, thank you so much for taking some time. Happy holidays to you, sir.
You too. Thank you.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team returns to talk about expectations for the 2026 General Assembly after the break. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Let's bring back in two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Lara Beck and Republican Massillamany. We've already talked about redistricting, but the 2026 General Assembly, as you very well know, a session rather, has already begun. What do you expect out of the session this year? I'll start with you, Lara.
Well, I think, this is not a budget year session. And so I think in a budget year session, the whole objective is to do no harm and to get out quickly and early. That tends to not happen, though. So I think redistricting obviously will be the headline out of it. But there generally are some pieces of legislation that tend to pop. So we'll have to kind of see how that plays out. It's also going to be interesting as well, because there are, with these new maps, assuming if the Senate passes them, that opens up a whole new door for people to run for office and new seats. And it'll be very interesting to see if they try to move out quickly because some of these folks look in the mirror and see a member of Congress.
Mario, your expectations?
I think it's going to be somewhat boring, especially after redistricting. They're going to try and get in and get out, to Laura's point. I think that there are some interesting bills that are been floated around, one of those being the casino in Allen County. I think that's going to have a lot of interest. In Indiana, we don't move casinos that easily, and moving that casino to Allen County, figuring out who's going to be developing that casino, things of that nature, that's going to be very interesting. Additionally, there's some things on immigration and data centers. Data centers are a hot topic if you're not talking about redistricting. So I think where data centers are going to be placed, what type of limitations are going to be put on these data centers, I think it's going to be an interesting and controversial topic that's going to be discussed.
Absolutely, 100%. And aside from those guys, two other items of interest: an amendment that would allow for prosecutors and judges to be impeached, and a bill that would also authorize the death penalty to be carried out by a firing squad, Lara.
Well, I mean, I don't want to roll my eyes and dismiss it out of hand, but there are so many other things that the legislature could be working on. I mean, right now, when you look at polling and you look at data that's coming out from all over the country, including Indiana, right now people care about affordability and how rising costs are impacting their lives. And to me, it is an unfortunate distraction to have firing squads and judicial impeachment when really you should be looking at how can we make childcare, how can we expand childcare, how can we make it affordable for people, how can we grow education, how can we make ourselves more competitive in the global marketplace. Another example is healthcare. How can we make sure that people have affordable healthcare? But instead, we're focusing on sideshows that get headlines like, firing squads.
Right. Mario, I'll let you respond to that.
I do think that it would be beneficial, especially after this redistricting fight, to try and focus on some bread and butter issues, such as housing affordability, and also, not just healthcare, but healthcare has been an issue in Indiana for a long time. We have one of the highest premiums. As a small business owner myself, our health insurance premiums went up by over 20%. Most small businesses are having a hard time being able to insure their employees and make sure that they have proper healthcare. So I think, healthcare has been a serious issue, something that I would love to be addressed in this upcoming General Assembly.
If that is the case, then why focus on these other items then?
To Lara's point, it's kind of an interesting, quirky issue. I will say the firing squad thing, there have been some serious problems with the lethal injections, with the chemicals in the lethal injections going out of warranty and not being proper. So they're trying to find other solutions. Firing squad, I think, is not a serious a solution to that problem. But regarding, judicial appointees and judicial and prosecutor, there's something needs to be done. We are having serious safety issues, public safety concerns with crime and increasing crime, and with judicial officers not following the law. How are we going to solve that? Once they get elected, they stay in office forever. So, that is a problem. I don't know if impeachment is the way to solve that problem.
Lara, 30 seconds left. Close us out here on that. Respond to Mario.
I'm less concerned about prosecutors because prosecutors are elected, and I think a lot of this is in response to Ryan Mears and the fact that the General Assembly can't stand that we have a Democrat prosecutor in Marion County. On the judicial issue, I do think that if you have judges that are appointed for lifetime terms, we do need to look at how that is done. Again, don't necessarily know if impeachment is the way to go, but that's my take on it.
Okay, well, we'll be watching. Good to see you both. Happy holidays. Thank you so much for coming on. and we will be right back.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here, of course, next Sunday morning at 9:30. And be sure to check out the All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.